an incredible reverb can sort of send you on what feels like a space journey, right? So, you know, the sound of Vangelis, the sound of incredible kind of film score music. I think a huge part of that is kind of the sound of synth instruments into big lush reverb, and I think the Lexicon were a big part of this, kind of the first big rack unit reverbs. I think the Lexicon might have been there for the start of this. And I think the elephant in the room is that for a long time the Helix wasn't necessarily excelling in the area of reverb. For years online you'd read people saying, yeah, the reverbs are okay but they're not fractal level, or yeah, the reverbs are okay but they don't necessarily do this thing, or you know, whatever. There certainly was the sentiment online that there were certain things that the reverbs in the Helix weren't great for. Now, I think that really has changed in a big way with the update 3.15, to the point now that I personally feel like there is no plate reverb on any guitar unit that sounds better than the dynamic plate. That's my opinion, and I've just tried using the Fractal FM3, a few of the plates on there, and compared them just side by side quickly. For me, the dynamic plate on the Helix really is pretty incredible. It's also not that I'm suddenly saying that the fractal stuff is sounding bad, but in the past I'd have been potentially looking at the Helix reverbs, and I've been making tweaks from the Helix reverbs thinking, right, how could I make this sound more like what I'm able to achieve in the fractal world? Whereas now, in the fractal world, when I open up a plate reverb, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, right, what would I change to get more of what I'm looking for? And the tables have turned, and I'm now thinking, what would I do to this fractal kind of plate reverb to make it sound more like what I'm able to achieve with the Helix plate reverb? It's just a bit of a paradigm shift. There are different reverb sounds out there for sure, and the cloud reverbs in the fractal unit I find incredible still. The Nimbostratus and the pitch shifted reverbs and all this sort of thing I still think are incredible, but for this kind of plate sound and this eerie, spacey, travelling on a journey through space and time thing, the dynamic plate on the Helix really is where it's at for me. And it came with the update 3.15. The dynamic plate, the dynamic room and the dynamic hall are the responsibility of a chap called Norm, who came from Victoria and who has his fingerprints on both the Digitech and Lexicon world. So the guy has a bit of a history in this space, and I think he's done an incredible job. But let's just dive into this a little bit further. In case you weren't sure whether to believe me about there being a fairly big difference between the older reverbs and the new ones, here's the old plate reverb. Here's the new one. Like, that's night and day, right? Now, before you skewer me with YouTube derision, feel free to leave comments in the comment section about your favourite plate reverbs that are out there. Obviously, I hold the Fractal stuff in really high regard. I think some of their stuff is great. I'm not super familiar with any other options out there for great plate reverbs, so I'd be happy to receive some comments in the YouTube about other things that you think are really good. The Meris Mercury 7 has a plate on it, which I know that the guys at Line 6 really like, but you know, leave your other comments. So what I really like about this is we've got
There's movement in the tail, which we've got access to control with the motion and the motion range. We've got kind of elements of that kind of high-end shimmery stuff. We've got a nice decay to it. It's kind of over time getting a bit darker. Now you can use the damping control to get even more of that high-end stuff in it. So at the moment I've got it at 10 kilohertz. By default it will be low at like 3.7, which I think you can afford to take it way up. So this is with the damping at 20 kilohertz. If I have the long decay on, you hear like you've got a bit of that kind of metallicness to it, but not loads. Way down at 3.7 you get this kind of thing. A much darker reverb. It's letting less of that high end into the actual kind of plate reverb space. Just incredible. So the other thing I've got going on is that I've assigned the decay switch. So my default is set to 15 milliseconds, and then I've got a decay latching switch set to infinite so that I can have those really long tails. The motion rate and range, I guess you could think about it like a modulation, right? And then you can think about it as like a spinning plate kind of. But again, much like that damping setting and the motion rate and motion range, basically wherever you set those doesn't tend to sound bad. The main thing for me is to bring up that decay to like 10 seconds or beyond for this kind of sound, and really bring up that damping factor to sort of 10 kilohertz or above. And then you get these. incredibly beautiful trails. The other thing I like to add, which I've just done, is just add in some subtle glitch delay. So here's the sound of just the glitch delay without the dynamic plate. There's not much going on there, right? It's just like a little bit of this crystal thing and a reverse delay, which I've added now. Just like a little bit of movement, and if you put that kind of in front of the plate, you get this kind of thing. Just a really small amount of kind of little shimmery artifacts and stuff there. Let me know if you want me to drop this into the folder. This is kind of plate. This will work on HX Effects, HX Stomp, for Helix. You know, for me, I'm having a ton of fun with this. There's no amp model or anything. It's just clean guitar. I just don't think there are more beautiful reverb sounds out there for me. So I just wanted to make a little video saying thank you to Norm for your work with the dynamic plate. An incredible, incredible reverb. And it's in Helix Native too. This is a thing that I use all the time for the kind of like shimmery stuff that you might hear in my tracks. That is the sound of the glitch delay and the dynamic plate and a shimmer and some other things. But it's just a really cool sound, I think. So that's my thoughts on that. I really think that the Helix 3.15 update did take, particularly with this dynamic plate, the reverbs to a whole new kind of plateau, a whole new level of real usability, real musicality, and real inspiration for me, at least. Let me know if you have a differing opinion on that. If you've got examples of amazing plate reverbs out there, I'd love to hear about those or check them out. For me, still, I think one of the best reverb plugins in the world is free. Valhalla Supermassive is incredible and incredibly inspirational for some of the same reasons as this, and it's free. So do check that one out for some of these kind of massive cloud style reverbs and things that are super useful for everything. But yeah, thank you for stopping by, and I hope you enjoyed the reverb. Cheers. you.